If you are applying to business school this year or even in a future year, don't take the GMAT. I'm going to explain why and what to do instead in this video. Welcome back to MBA Monday. I'm Angela, and as you may know, not only have I been an MBA coach for 18 years, I also used to teach the GMAT. I taught the GMAT for over 7 years at Manhattan Prep. I taught live classes, I taught online classes, I did private tutoring. I've personally helped hundreds of people beat the GMAT. And I am here to tell you that in 2026, it is the wrong test to take for all but one type of individual, and I will tell you who that person is at the end of this video. I really hope you are finding this video early in your MBA preparation process so that you can listen to what I'm saying and commit to the better test to take in 2026. But even if you're like halfway through your GMAT prep, even if you've taken the test once already and didn't do well and are looking at a retest, please watch this video before you invest any more time in the GMAT. In this video, I'm going to tell you what the myths are surrounding the two different tests and why it's not true that the GMAT is actually the better test to take for most people. In the second part of the video, I'm going to tell you what the truth is and how to choose the right test for you. And finally, I'm going to tell you who should actually take the GMAT, because there is one type of person that I actually do recommend the GMAT for. If you've been following along for a while, you probably know that I do free MBA consultation calls. You can request your own at this link right here, mbaprotocol.com/MBA, and you can talk to me about working with the MBA Protocol team and joining our community to forward your MBA application goals. In that conversation, we'll talk about your profile and all the aspects of your candidacy that come into play so we can help you find the best MBA application package to get you across the finish line for the schools that you're targeting. As part of that discussion, I invariably end up talking with candidates about their test score. Should I take the GMAT? Should I take the GRE? Is my test score high enough? Should I switch to the executive assessment? Should I get a test waiver? Should I apply to schools that only waive the test? Lots and lots of questions have come up over the years about these test scores. So in those calls, I frequently have to recommend that candidates who have been really committed to GMAT prep switch to the GRE, sometimes even late in the game. This is a really hard conversation for me to have because the myths around the GMAT being a superior test in MBA admissions are pervasive, pernicious, and persistent. They refuse to die. There are a lot of vested interests in the GMAT being the better test for the MBA program, and none of those vested interests are the admissions committees themselves. I'm going to make an entirely separate video debunking some of these myths really specifically and talking about the test prep companies and the war between them and why you shouldn't get caught in the middle of that. Here are some of the most pernicious myths that I'm continually trying to debunk in my videos and one-on-one calls. Number one, the GMAT signals a stronger commitment to a career in business than the alternatives. Number two, the GMAT is preferred by top MBA programs because it's a more business-relevant quantitative test. Number three, the GMAT is more respected among post-MBA employers. And number four, I am candidate type X, consultant, finance, non-traditional, no quant background, fill in the blank here. Therefore, the GMAT will make me a stronger candidate than any other option. All four of these statements are myths. It is not true that MBA programs, at least the top MBA programs that I tend to be talking about on this channel, care which test you take. I'm really curious to hear from you which of these myths you've heard, or if you've even heard other myths about why the GMAT is the best test to take if you're applying to business school. So please drop a comment below. What GMAT myth have you heard about why that test is so great? Okay, let me quickly debunk these four myths. Number one, taking the GMAT is not a meaningfully strong signal that you're committed to a career in business. Applying to business school is a meaningfully strong signal that you're committed to a career in business. You're going to write essays. You're going to have a personal statement. You're going to put forward all of your post-MBA goals to each and every program that you apply to. That is where they're getting the evidence about how committed you are to business school, not which test you take. Number two, it is not true that MBA programs prefer one test over the other versus no test. They have said very specifically that when they accept both tests, they are indifferent between them. And in the case where they offer a test waiver, they are willing to consider candidacies without the test score, taking into account everything else about them. Now, whether or not you should take the test versus waive the test is an entirely different subject for another video, but suffice it to say, if schools accept other tests than the GMAT, they are indifferent between them. They would not insert an aspect into the application process that deliberately disadvantages certain applicants arbitrarily. If they accept multiple tests, they weight them equally, and in some ways, they weight other tests more highly. Again, I've talked about this in multiple other videos, and I'm going to make an entirely separate video purely dedicated to the war between the two biggest tests that MBA applicants take. Third myth, the GMAT is more respected among post-MBA recruitment companies. Also not true. Companies that recruit on campus do need some evidence that you are analytically capable and quantitatively talented. If you go to a school that has grade non-disclosure, which many of the top MBA programs do, then they are going to look for other evidence that you have these abilities. A test score. Any test score is good evidence that you're able to do the challenging work of, say, BCG or McKinsey or JP Morgan. But these companies put a lot more emphasis on your career trajectory, your substantive experiences, your networking capabilities, and your interview skills. Those are going to play a much bigger role in your ultimate success in garnering the internship and full-time job that you want than your test score, full stop, and which test you took holds very, very little sway over how post-MBA recruiters will view you. This one is just plainly not true. And finally, I am candidate X, therefore I need to take the GMAT to signal something about myself. Now, I honestly don't understand where this particular myth comes from. Perhaps people are looking at the statistics that show that on average, people coming from finance take the GMAT more so than the GRE for lots of reasons that have nothing to do with the fact that they're in finance or the fact that schools prefer it or the fact that it's a stronger signal of their quantitative abilities. Sometimes they just heard the same myths that everyone else heard, and so they went and they took the test that everyone else took. That could be one reason. It could also be, this is another one I hear, that like, oh, I'm a non-traditional, so I have to send a strong signal that I'm business material, so I'm going to take the GMAT. And the truth is, as long as you have a solid test score, a solid undergraduate GPA, and a resume that shows professional growth, which test you take just doesn't matter to schools that are making this decision. So these are some of the myths that keep the GMAT in a dominant position among MBA applicant test prep choices. But now I'm going to tell you the unfortunate truth about how this test score actually incorporates into your profile and into MBA program decisions. I've made a lot of videos about this, and again, in these one-on-one calls, I'm frequently having to explain this to applicants who are just steadfastly clinging to the GMAT when their test score is abysmal. And they're never going to get a 99th percentile score no matter how hard they work on the GMAT. Not everyone can get that score. There are lots of reasons for this that have nothing to do with your intelligence, your ability to do well in business school, and your ability to have an amazing career post-MBA. Schools know this. They understand that test scores are very imperfect metrics of the qualities that lead someone to be a successful MBA student and a successful MBA alum. So they are looking at these test scores with very mixed feelings. On the one hand, they like it. It's a common metric that everyone has, and they can kind of compare apples to apples and say, Bob has score X, Joe has score X minus 20, so we can put Bob above Joe, at least on this one dimension. And schools do use the test scores to calibrate candidates against each other. But here's the secret back office aspect of these tests that most people don't understand that could potentially screw you if you are not the kind of person who can waltz in and get a 99th percentile score. And that is that the GMAT still holds more sway over a school's ranking than the GRE does. When schools are submitting their giant package to apply to be ranked by the various ranking agencies, one of the big questions that they're asked is what percentage or how many of your students submitted the GMAT versus the GRE versus something else versus nothing. They have to report those numbers. And then they also have to report some version of the average test score achieved by those admitted students on all of the tests. For the past several years, the average GMAT score of top schools has played a disproportionate role in determining their rankings. Now, a lot is changing since they switched from the old format GMAT to the GMAT Focus, which has a different calibration and different numbers and everything. But it is still true that MBA programs are more mindful of their average GMAT than of their average GRE and their average executive assessment because those test scores have less of an impact on their rankings. Not only is what I'm saying true from a logical and strategic perspective, but I also have data and stories to back this up. It happens every once in a while that a candidate that we really love, who's a client of ours, will apply to top programs and get waitlisted. Whenever that happens, I counsel that applicant to look at their test score very carefully and see if there's a way that they can raise the test score. Getting put on the waitlist is not always due to a weakness. It's not always due to a test score weakness. There are a lot of reasons that people get waitlisted, a topic for another video. But the first thing I always look at is that test score. And it has happened on multiple occasions where we've had a client who submitted a strong application with a weak GMAT. And so their first plan of attack to get off that waitlist was to go and take the GRE and to submit that score. It's happened multiple times where a candidate who was waitlisted submitted a GRE score that was not even better than the GMAT they had submitted before. It was actually a weaker score, but it was a GRE. And then they were admitted immediately to the target school where they were waitlisted. So just think about what this means practically for you. If you are otherwise a really strong candidate and you're really passionate about this school and you have an amazing future vision and you have a solid career track record and you just aren't great at taking tests, if you submit a below average or well below average GMAT score, that is going to hurt you more than a below average or well below average GRE score, simply because of how it plays a role in the rankings, not because of anything whatsoever about you or your capabilities. You can see I kind of get heated about this subject because so many people are going down the wrong path mistakenly, causing themselves a lot of extra time, costing a lot of extra money and a lot of extra agony in this process when they really should be taking the GRE instead of the GMAT. There are a lot of reasons, in addition to this fact, that a weaker than average score will hurt you less if it's a GRE than if it's a GMAT. And that includes things like, despite what some of the test prep companies claim, in my experience, the GRE is actually easier for non-native speakers of English. They cite the presence of vocabulary on the GRE as a reason why this test is harder for non-native speakers, but that's just memorization. And most people who are applying to business school, they know how to make flashcards. They know how to memorize words. You can tackle the vocabulary section on the GRE, and the remainder of the test, on average, seems to be a bit easier for people who aren't whizzes at standardized tests. I have more than one data point that proves that schools are squeamish about accepting weak GMAT scores, but they will be more than happy to accept a weak GRE score for a candidate that they otherwise love. Now, here's the thing. You have to be a candidate that they love. I mean, that's the whole point of this channel. That's the whole point of my company. It's to help you put forward an application that schools have a really hard time saying no to because they believe in your vision for the future. They believe in you as a leader. They want to see you succeed, and they want you in their community. And if that's the case, that will override a test score, but it will be harder to do that if that test score is a GMAT. And that's why, unless you're one specific type of candidate, you should really be taking the GRE. Now I'm going to tell you who that one person is who should go and take the GMAT. And that is the person who is an ace at standardized tests. And you know who you are. If you're someone who did really well on the ACT or the SAT or the whatever all those the other tests are that you took in high school to college, if you did really well on pop quizzes and exams at university, if you're someone who can tackle a test with ease and survive under time pressure and just do a really good job without a lot of effort, if you're confident that you can get an above average GMAT score, then you should take the GMAT. Everyone else should take the GRE in 2026. It's a strong statement. I know it's a controversial point of view, but I hope I've made a clear argument in this video why, whoever you are, unless you're a test-taking ace, you should take the GRE. I'm an entirely unbiased source of information on this topic. I used to teach the GMAT. I also taught the LSAT. I never taught the GRE. I have no products or services to sell you to help you do well on either one of these tests. So believe me when I say it's in your best interest to take the GRE unless you're going to ace the test. And then it's definitely better to have a GMAT. I am rooting for you, whichever test you choose, whichever path you take to business school. I want you to succeed. So come back here next week for more MBA application tips, tools, advice, blah, blah, blah. Hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next week. A career coach. I'm going to do this a different way.